Hey, what's up? Silas here. This is going to be a shorter video asking people what they think the conspiracy theories around the whole Florida shooting incident are. There's continued videos about David Hogg coming out, who's the main guy who's been the main student who's been out there talking about the different talking points of the left. He's the one who's very active on gun control. And I just saw a video now that apparently is a video that he might have shot and then made up in clips. I know some of these videos I just record on my phone and then I can do some editing on like the iMovie and things. So it's possible to do these things. And he happens to have been a reporter. In this interview that he gives, in this video that he releases, apparently it was something that was recorded during the shooting. He was talking to somebody else in there, and then it has him talking about something after the shooting, and he's putting in different clips together and just kind of giving a narrative of what's going on. And the person who shared this video, I'll leave a link below in the low bar to the video, was saying, this guy is too calm. He's too calm. I can't believe he's acting this way. And he's talking about gun control while the shooting is going on. And I think that's a natural thing. You think about how many people have stances on gun control, especially on just the gun issue in general, especially when you talk about younger people. And this is one of the reasons where some people are freaking out about like the age of being allowed to purchase guns being changed to 18 in a lot of states. And I'm saying, okay, I do understand the Second Amendment has everyone to have guns, but why isn't there no rules at all for that? Why isn't it like 14-year-olds can get guns, 10-year-olds can get guns? If people are already comfortable with the fact that, oh, you had to be 18 before to get guns, why not the 16-year-old who wanted a gun? When it comes down to it, how many 16-year-olds actually want a gun? How many 18-year-olds actually want a gun? How many 20-year-olds actually want a gun? In this situation where you have it in the United States of America, where I think you will have to admit that in the West in general, there has been an extended childhood where people are getting older and older. There's even an article that was saying, oh, we should change the age of childhood to like 24. And when you do it in that way, I do understand there's something about how people are raised, how there's more of a coddling of people as they grow up. But I don't think it's even just a coddling thing. I think it's a life form type thing. If you divide a life form into certain percentages of its life and you say, okay, how much of a life, how much of a life form, like I was talking to somebody today and I was like, yeah, okay, I'm not young anymore. And the person was like, oh, you're not young. I mean, then they were talking about how like, oh, 60 or 65 is old. And I said, yes, but I said I'm not young. I didn't necessarily say I'm old. When do you get to a point where you have, okay, this is the middle age of this being. This is the middle age of this creature. This is the middle age of this life form. If you're assuming that people actually live to like 80s on general now, especially in the United States of America, then it's not really that off to say that when you're still 24, when you're still 25, you could still be considered young. You could still be considered a child when it comes to that life form. Now, I need to do more research on that and see how, on average, most creatures' life forms are considered kids. Because, like, let's say trees grow a lot longer, but they're not really considered a young tree. And they get to a point where they're a tree, and then they stay at that tree for, I think, majority of their life, and they just die. I don't know if there's majority where you say it's old. I'm thinking things like maybe tortoises, where they grow up to like hundreds of years old. Does that necessarily mean they get to a point where they stop being that? And then I think I'd have to study something like dogs and see, like, do all dogs who have the same kind of different lifespan, 7 to 15 years, I think, do all dogs have that puppy stage or that child stage? I know some people call them puppies all the way through to adulthood. I have some friends who do that, and that really weirds me out. But anyway, back to this thing. So, yes, you can be kids, especially when it comes to knowledge. I'm thinking about what I knew at that age, how I felt about guns. I remember leaving when I left the United States first. I remember being rather young, in my early 20s, and having this incident happen. I was in West Virginia in college, and one of my friends was from one of the kids I played football with was from the inner city area in DC. And apparently he went back for just vacation, some long weekend. And he was out, he went to, this is a story that I heard, I still haven't confirmed the story, but this is a story I heard at the time. He went out to a club and he was borrowing his friend's car and he was with some of his friends, and those friends were from back there and they were involved in drugs. They owed some people money, and they got in an altercation with the group of that person that his friend owed money to. His friend wasn't even with them. But after that, they leave the club. They're driving back. One car stops in front of them. Another car stops behind them. They get out, shoot a machine gun, and kill the guy. Killed him and the person who was in the car. And yeah, so my friend passed at that point. My teammate passed at that point. And then back in West Virginia, we get this news that he had passed away. Some of my friends, some of my other teammates had come from the DC area or had come from inner city areas where they had a different relationship with guns than the people would in West Virginia, who in West Virginia they're used to hunting. They have this one story, I think I might have mentioned it before. I was going out to a friend's house. It was kind of like this frat house, fresh friend's house. There was like maybe I think 5 or 6 rooms in this house. So 5 or 6 different people played. I lived there. I used to go hang out there. I used to have parties and things like that, or I'd just go kick it. And I go in there and I go on the balcony, and there's this blue plastic bag, this massive plastic bag, large plastic bag, and I go in and look at it, and there's just a deer's head decomposing. I'm like, whoa. So I go in there and I asked them, what are you guys doing in this? And they're like, oh, we went out. Somebody had gone out hunting. They shot the deer, they cut the head off, and then they were letting the meat like slaw off so they could hang up the antlers and the skull and things like that. So that's their relationship with guns. So you have a society, one culture, one area where they use guns a lot, and they were asking about the shooting back in DC. They said, "Are they going to catch him?" I remember them asking my friends who were from DC area or from the inner city, "Are they going to catch him?" And my friends from the DC area were just like, "No, probably not. It was shot in the morning. He could have been the 10th shooting that day. Like to actually find who's done this. And are guns registered? I know people are living in a closer area. There's just not that much control on who has guns and the violence there that it happens. They have a different relationship with guns there." And I remember later on asking a police officer. I was down and thinking a Sheets gas station. Sheets, for those who don't know, I mentioned this last time I mentioned it, was this place where it's kind of like a gas station, convenience store, restaurant thing. Those things have expanded more to the city areas, but this is definitely something that you see a lot more in the rural areas of the United States of America. So we was just there. We had done a run from the school to get some food, and there was a policeman there. And I think we got into a conversation, and I just ended up asking about when is the last time someone was shot in this area. And he said in the area, it was the third biggest city in West Virginia. And he said the last time someone was shot, he had to actually respond to somebody being shot was something like 2 years before that. And he said over the last 5 years, I think that was like the one occasion that had happened where someone was directly shot. So people might have been shot at, but a lot more people, I think the same amount of people, I would argue just off the break, like I haven't researched this, but I would assume there are as many guns per capita in the Wheeling, West Virginia area as there are in the inner city areas of DC. But they're used for an entirely different thing in the Wheeling, West Virginia area. So now, if you go to those two different places and then there's gun violence occurring in a DC area, I think you might find, okay, this might not be right, but what I'm trying to say is if you have that situation when gun violence is occurring, I think both these communities are aware of guns, but it's not easy to assume that everybody would think in a situation like this school shooting, when this David Hogg character was recording this during the shooting, talking about what's happening, already giving us some promo about how he thinks there should be more gun control. Not everybody in these situations will think at least one person here hiding or everybody in here hiding, if they had guns, that would change the situation. Many people in that situation will think, I wish there were fewer guns. And I can attest to that because I remember that being part of the decision of why at that point in time, right after college, thinking about that, thinking about a few other things, thinking about the apparent race relations and the apparent struggles that people were supposed to have, that was hearing from the media, that I was getting from different sources and things like that, just different ideas about the United States of America had me thinking like, oh, why are people shooting people so much here? Why is it so hard for black people here? And then I left the country around 2007 with a lot of ideas in my mind thinking, if this is the best country in the world, I'd rather see what other countries are like, because people aren't getting shot there, people aren't racist there, people aren't this and that there, life could be better there. And I had the chance to go out to Italy and finish up my education there, and I did that. But since then, I have learned a lot about different issues, about what the United States of America is, about how I perceive things, about my own ability, and my point of view on guns and things like that has changed. Now that's the thing. I wasn't even the one who was thinking, who was in the threat of being shot by a gun. Yet I was still considering what happened to my friend, a situation like, oh, I wish there were fewer guns. I didn't really consider what if he had one, or what if somebody else in the street had one, what if there's a situation where there's other situations, or didn't even consider the sort of people who had guns, the sort of person who had the gun in that situation. I didn't take into account that, hey, in West Virginia, you have a lot of people who have guns, yet that doesn't happen. I didn't take into account those things. So yeah, David Hogg might be very capable at certain things, but when you're in that situation, I don't necessarily think the automatic thing would be doing to automatically change your thinking of gun control and think, okay, now I'm going to be pro gun, pro guns, pro 2A, have as many people have it, go out and train to see how I can use guns. And I'll leave another video, which is a really good video by is Right Angle with Bill Whittle, Scott Ott, and Steve Green. I really like these guys. They make really good content, and they're talking about what happened with this situation with the gun control, talking about this thing that Donald J. Trump said, where he said, I don't know, this is something that, paraphrasing, he said, this is something that you don't know how you're going to act unless you're tested. And he says, I would like to think that if I was in that situation, I would have ran into the building, even if without a weapon. And he said, I think many of you in this room would. And they're talking about how masculinity, how manhood is something, there is something about that makes you want to protect people, want to protect your family, want to protect people around you, want to protect people in need. And one thing I think we can admit is there is a lack of manly, alpha male type of teaching towards boys and people in society. I think the main shooter in this situation could have used some more stronger masculinity, some stronger responsible masculinity. David Hogg himself may also need that in his life. Maybe his reaction to it would be different. But also you have to consider these are also children in that situation. But they make the case in this video, and you can see with these men, their reaction to the increase of gun violence. They're talking about different situations that happened in the past for them. To them, that was something that they decided, hey, I'm actually going to go in and learn how to use a gun more. I'm going to get my concealed carry permit. I'm going to train myself to be able to have situational awareness. They're going to take that upon them. So next time, if it does happen, they're hoping it never has to happen. But if it does happen, then they can act in that certain way. You know? And that's going back to what I was saying with my friend when I was talking about how I am not young anymore. And I was thinking there's certain things in my life where I'm like, look, I'm not young. And he said, don't be so hard on yourself. And I said, look, I'm not saying it's worst case scenario. I'm not saying I'm giving up because I'm not young anymore, and I feel there's a lot of things that somebody at this age may, in general, be better off of having accomplished and done, and have some kind of life security and things like that. But at the same point, I said, look, I'm not saying that it's the worst case scenario, I'm giving up, life's over. What I'm trying to do is be firm with myself, be realistic with myself, be aware of the worst case scenario, be aware of the bad things that could happen, and prepare for them, be prepared for them, but still plan to do as good as possible, to do as good as possible with what you have. So that's the kind of situation. I think in these situations, if something bad happens, it's good to be able to understand that, look, this is the worst thing that can happen right now. What are the things that I can be ready to do if the worst thing happens? But that doesn't necessarily mean you're always expecting the worst thing to happen. That can seem like, look, I do understand somebody could come shoot up this place. But if they do, is it better for me to have a weapon? Is it better for me to not? Is it better for me to know what to do with it? Is it better for me to know how guns shoot so I can know, like, hey, if he has this kind of weapon, the best thing to do is go out to this range, is to understand that he has to reload, or to understand that if the noise is coming from this direction, I need to go to this other direction. Just have some basic situational awareness and know those things versus just saying, like, look, I'm just planning for nothing. I don't know what to do in that situation. I'll just panic. But yeah, so this turned out to be longer than I thought. What do you guys think? If you actually think there is a conspiracy with this thing? Because that's the thing I want to ask me in this video. This guy is somebody who's trained. He's been a reporter. Even when he tries to show emotion, there seems to be a part in this video where in the end he's talking about how one of his sister lost some two friends, and he gives a plug for his news channel, and it's something like he's practiced. He's been on TV before. I'm just thinking about when I started recording these videos, how differently I would purport myself. I was a little more self-conscious about what I was doing. versus how I'm more comfortable making the videos now. So he could have been practiced. That could be his TV voice. He's been a reporter. He's a reporter for his school. So he wants to be a CNN reporter. He wants to be a big time reporter. So he could be opportunistic in this sense. But I don't think it's some kind of plant. What do you guys think the whole conspiracy with him is? If you think there is a conspiracy with him, do you think he's a plant? Do you think he's set in? I think it's a situation where somebody went in, got crazy, and this is the story that we're being told. Some unbalanced kid came up with this idea to go and do this, and then he did it. He found access to a weapon. The school was unguarded. There's a lot of just questionable things happening with the deputy's office, and 45 or something times people going to check and not doing anything with actually understanding the threat that this kid had, and all these things. Just the breakdown, the failures of the state, of the government that's supposed to protect you, supposedly supposed to protect you, is just shameful in my opinion. But yeah, so that's another thing. Like, I understand how shocked some people are in the United States of America because they pay so many taxes to it. They have certain people have certain expectations of the state and all that security that they have, and then they see this happen. Yet here in Kenya, if that happened, people in general don't really expect the police to act in a similar way here as they would there. I think they understand, yeah, the police are there, but I don't think people even think of calling the police, first of all, if something happens. If something like that pops off, if there's police around, someone might call, but people normally call private security forces and normally do things like that. And that's one thing I think the rest of the world might be able, or the first world might be able to learn from looking at places like the developing countries, where the state themselves, the state institutions that they have in the first world, in the developed countries, in first world countries, that are set and ingrained, that people feel these are pillars of the society. These are things that we must depend on. We have to have these things this way. It's also interesting to look at how those things are going on in developing countries. Because here we don't have the police force set to that point. The social trust that the police force has in the United States of America, whether you think it's valid or not, is definitely anywhere close to that. It's not even a percentage. Say it's like 10% of what it is to your average American, the expectation of what the police should do. I just saw a security vehicle here, and also 911 is in general not really the number that most places call. I think the police number here is 119 or something like that. But there's a company here that has 911 as their number. But most people use private security like this. People self-police in their communities to different extents. When you go to the countryside, there's definitely very little police presence in the rural areas. But yeah, so people have a different interaction and reaction towards guns. As I've mentioned before, it's rather hard to get a gun here. I just saw some news story some days back where somebody was saying that they want it to be easier for people to obtain guns because there was some increase in gun violence. I need to actually check, but I think I saw this news article talking about how in a country of about 45 million, gun control, it's rather difficult to get a gun here in Kenya. The rates of actual people getting killed, I think, through guns was something like, I want to say 26 in 2016. Now, this is the reported ones. They could be some that happen in the countryside or that go unreported, or that are situations where the police might have shot some people because, oh yeah, just recently, another story I just heard was some students in Meru, which is a smaller city in Kenya. Some students were organizing a protest against the school. They wanted the school to shut down. They wanted better school fees, better teaching. And students form unions here in Kenya. And they had this union. One of the union leaders was shot dead during a protest. And then they had the other leaders talking about how something needs to be done about this, the security situation, police brutality needs to end. And I'm just mentioning that because we're talking about guns, and also just talking about schools, and also just as an indication of how sometimes my life is kind of disjointed, where I'm trying to see what people are protesting about in the United States of America. Some teachers are talking about the seminar at Portland State University or something. They're talking about how men and women are different. They're talking about that in that situation, and then how they're biologically different. And then you have some kids shutting down the PA system, yelling obscenities, saying these fascists need to be out there. There's no fascism welcome here. And you have those kind of kids. You have the kids protesting for microaggressions and things like that in the United States of America. You have kids willingly having the access to all these hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then it's taking the most basic, like, feminist basket weaving, underwater basket weaving type courses, and just putting themselves in debt and then wondering what's happening with their life. And then you have Then I have other parts of my life where I'm aware of these things here in Kenya, where kids are literally getting shot by the police while protesting for just better school fees and better access to schools, to education. And it's this. I think things like that are why I kind of understand. Experiences like that are part of the reason why I've been unable to just buy into certain narratives, to just follow the certain things that are given. And I do understand that's a lived experience type thing. So I do understand there is something about lived experience, but that's why I can create this video, because I did have to experience it personally for me to take in that information. You can go out there and experience these other things, and then it can make you question how you look at things. We have the ability to look at this, compare and contrast, and understand things better. So yeah, with this situation with David Hogg, I think a good thing to think about is how many kids are actually acting this way. Some of the kids in the drama kids, how many people in the world actually think about gun control like he does? How many of the things he's saying are really original thoughts or just regurgitation of what's been out there in the public eye? How many of the things is he saying that are actually based on a solid actual foundation, or is this just things that he's just saying because he's just saying it? And the percentage of kids I think that you think would react in this way, I think is a lot higher than you'd think. It's a small percentage, but the ones who actually choose to go out there and talk, chances are of them just going out and saying talking points is a lot easier than I think somebody going out there and having the ability and even mind wherewithal to actually give an in-depth understanding of what's going on and be more nuanced and things about the actual issue. So yeah, that's it for now. And for a short video, turns out 20 minutes. Anyway, like, share, and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think about this thing. It's unfolding, and it's just shameful for me what the police have done. And that, for me, that's the thing. That policeman, something Israel, Scott Israel, I think, the sheriff, he is just, wow, he's a character. Like, this thing is coming out like a movie where you're like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. He's a character. The things he's saying, the quotes he's making, if he's saying, oh, the lion doesn't care what the sheep do. He's quoting these things from Game of Thrones and things like that. Just the sheer, this blasé nature of him. Like, wow, he could be an African politician. He could be, he has the same kind of mentality or ideals that your typical African politician who just doesn't want to, or sub-Saharan Africa, yeah, your typical third world politician or police officer. Because, yeah, he's just so blasé and doesn't care. And it's just something to see how, yeah, these are the people that are out there. Not every cop is a good cop, because people are people. Some cops happen to be good people. Some cops happen to be bad people. This happens across the world. And, yeah, I don't know. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think about the video and the things that I've said in here. If you guys have had similar questions about the actors in this thing, do you think you're getting the full story from what's happened there? And, yeah. If you if you have any other questions about, I guess, the gun situation here in Nairobi, maybe, or in Kenya, if you guys can ask those, and maybe I can do some more research directly towards that. There's certain topics where I'm like, okay, I could actually get into this, but I don't have that much interest in it. But maybe if I see somebody who's watching this has some more interest in it, I might be able to be like, hey, because it might just take a little work here and there to actually find more information in it. But yeah, so like, share, and subscribe. Thanks. Till next video. Links below to the merchandise store and those videos that I mentioned before. I'll have some content in there, some more updates on what happened, and also links to the previous videos that I've done on this shooting incident and situation. But yeah, goodbye. Okay, I'd like to mention a few more things. First is the whole situation of changing the age to get guns to 21. This differs in different places. Different places have different laws to alcohol, to access to alcohol, to driving. I think driving is the same across the country. But I think this is a good example of states' rights, and that's another positive that's coming out here. A lot of people on the left politically are like, yeah, look, the states can do what they want. They should be able to adjust these things. They're backing that, saying if a state wants to have this law changed that way. And I think anytime you're talking about getting states' rights back and importance of that is good. I don't imagine these people will stick to it when they have things they consider part of their agenda. But they're also being recorded saying these things, defending states' rights. So the next time they come out and want some federal thing to push some kind of liberal agenda out there, some progressive agenda out there, some regressive leftist agenda, then people can just show them these films like, hey, look, here, you are for states' rights. And then people can go and move to the states where they want to have their 16-year-olds or 18-year-olds have weapons and things like that. They can move to the states that happens. I know it's not just a simple thing to just up and move, but I think it's going to be a gradual thing. I think if you're 18 and you're in a state that you have a gun, and then now they changed the law. I don't think they're going to come and confiscate your guns because they changed the law after you already had the gun. So I think it'll be a thing where now people who are coming up, maybe there's a few 17-year-olds out there who are really waiting to have their gun, and then now that happens. But what's the percentage of people that are going to be affected this way is one thing I'm wondering. Next to the security thing, the private security thing, what I was mentioning, where I stay right here in Nairobi, I mentioned this before. There was a time when, just a few days, a few months back, it was sometime around the election. Then there's questions if there's going to be post-election violence, and they end up having a situation where there was somebody shooting around here. I heard some gunshots. It turns out there was somebody with an altercation with some police had ran away, and then the policeman ended up killing one of the people, and two of the other people ran away. But I was sitting here in the house, trying to make sure the doors are locked, make sure if somebody comes into the compound, etc., thinking about those things. And I had been to a gun range. I've shot different guns before, so I've had some training with guns, some awareness with them, have studied them more and things like that. More comfortable with being around guns in this situation. So I remember thinking like, oh, I wish I had a gun in that situation. Yet I was still like, okay, situational awareness. What's the best thing to do to secure this location if something happens? Even though there is private security around this area, some of the neighboring houses have their own private security. And that's the thing. I think that mention of private security, even though in the United States of America, the police force are, I think, a lot more trusted or visual and evident than they are here in Kenya as a positive force for most people, or a daily force, part of their society, part of their culture. It turns out that still, in most cases, you still have private security. When you go to banks, when you go to other situations like that, think about it in the United States of America, and I think some of you may be surprised how little the police actually do. So I think it's good for people to kind of now have this situation where they can rethink what exactly does the police do. And to that end, I'll also link below to another really good video that I listened to from Ryan McMacken at the Mises Institute. I think it was Radio Rothbard, and he was talking about just the general failures of this so-called social contract that the people, the citizenry of United States of America have with their police force, and how the sheriffs and these other people in general really have failed them in the situation. So I think this is good. States' rights coming about, people realizing we can secure ourselves, and people questioning, is this public mass security truly the best way to achieve security for any other location in any place? But yeah, that's it.